In this demonstration, we'll take a look at how to use the Sumproduct function within Excel to create subtotals on filtered data. Let's start by taking a look at the data that I have. It's a pretty straightforward example where what I'm doing is I'm tracking payments for different players. So I've got player number 3 and player number 10, and I track how much money was paid and how that payment was made, whether it was a parent contribution, whether it was a sponsorship, whether it was through fundraising or 50-50, which is another form of fundraising. Now, the reason why I have these different categories is I want to track, how much of the budget is being paid for by parent contribution, sponsorship, fundraising, or 50-50. So down below here, I have a spot for the totals, right? So I want to have a total for the parent installments, a total for sponsorships, total for fundraising, total for 50-50. And then what I'll do is I'll total up all of those to create a grand total account balance or payment summary for the player itself. The hook is that I want to do it by filtering the player out. So I want to be able to type up here, put a number 3 in, let's say, and have it filter the list out, and then have these formulas apply to only the filtered data. Now, the reason why I stress that is because when you're using functions like the sum function or the sumIf function, they will total up filtered and non-filtered data. So if I'm looking at only the entries for player number 3, if I'm using the sum function, I'm getting the totals for everybody, whether they're shown on the screen or not. And that's not what I want in this example. Now, Excel has a subtotal function, which I use quite often, and it's a great function, but the hook with the subtotal function is it can be used to create this grand total if I wanted to. So when I filter by player 3, I could do a subtotal on this amount, and when we're only seeing the player number 3 entries, the subtotal function will create a total of only filtered data, which is pretty much what I want, with the exception of now I want the breakdown for the category of payment, right? Whether it's a parent installment, a sponsorship, a fundraising, or 50-50. So the subtotal function doesn't have the capability of filtering the information, or the totals, I should say, by the category or the criteria that I want to specify. So that's kind of why I'm going to turn to the Sumproduct function. The Sumproduct function is going to give me that capability to create subtotals on filtered data. Before looking at the Sumproduct function, what I want to do is give a little bit of background on Boolean logic and how Excel deals with Boolean logic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the word hockey here in this cell, and I'll put the word hockey in the next cell. Now, what I want to do here is I want to go and create a formula that checks to see if those two cells are equal to one another. So in Excel, I can hit the equal sign, choose the first word hockey, find out if it equals the next cell, which contains the word hockey. Then when I hit enter, it comes up with a true, so both values are equal. And if I change this to, let's say, baseball, we can see that the value comes up as false. Now this is important because this is going to be the foundation of the formula that I'm going to use to do my subtotals. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use Boolean logic. The problem is I can't use true and false in my formulas because you can't do mathematical operations on a true and false. So what I want to do is I want to convert the true and false to a value of 1 or 0, 1 meaning true and 0 meaning false. So in Excel, what you can do is I'm going to select that formula that came up with the word true, and up here in the formula bar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, after the equal sign, 2 dashes, right? This is a unary operator that will convert the result of true or false to a 1 or 0. And then what I got to do is open my bracket and put the mathematical operation in brackets. So that way we find out, does K5 equal L5 first? That'll come up with a true or false. Then the 2 dashes, the unary operator here, will apply and convert that true or false result to a 1 or a 0. So let's hit enter, and you can see that I have a 1 here now, so those two words are equal to each other. Or if I go and put in baseball, you'll see that the two words are not equal to each other. That's very important to the strategy that I'm going to use to solve my problem here on my subtotals. So what I'm going to do here, right off the bat, there's going to be two different pieces of criteria that I'm going to utilize to do my subtotals. The first thing is I'm going to put the number 3 here, and what eventually will happen is the spreadsheet will filter out the data and only show the entries for 3. But let's think even before the filter happens. What's going to happen is I'm going to create a formula that tells Excel, okay, take that number 3 or whatever value I type up here and then compare it against this range of cells. And when it does the comparison, it'll check, does 3 equal 3? Yes, it does, so it'll come up with a true. But what I'll do is I'll use the dash dash in my formula, which converts that true to a 1. And then what I'm going to do is also filter, I'll do my first example will be the parent installments, right? So what I'll do is in the formula, I'll check this group of cells for the value of an X. So does this cell have an X? Yes, it does, so it'll result in a 1. So we get a 1 here, multiplied by a 1 here, multiplied by the amount, which would be $50. In the end, that'll add to player number 3's parent contribution of $50. Now let me find another, there's number 3 that's not a parent contribution, right? So the way the formula is going to work, again, we're going to compare this cell against this cell. That'll come up with a boolean true, which will convert to a 1. Then we'll compare to see if this parent cell has an X. It doesn't, so that'll come up with false, which will convert to a 0. And then we get the 50. So it'll be 0 times 1 times 50, which is going to equal 0. So that means the answer of 0 will get added to our 50, right? So the parent contribution is still only $50. And it's going to work its all way down through all those cells. And that's how we're going to create the subtotals for parent contributions, sponsorships, fundraising, and 50-50. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can use Sumproduct to create our subtotals. So I'm going to do an equals Sumproduct, open the circular bracket. And again, you can watch the formula up top here. And the first thing I'm going to do is dash dash to convert the result of true or false to a 1 or a 0. Then I'm going to open my circular bracket and I'm going to say go evaluate all of these cells to see if they're equal to whatever number is typed up here. Close my circular bracket. Then I'm going to multiply that, and again in the first record example that should be a 1. So multiply it against my parent contribution formula, which will again start with a dash dash, open the circular bracket, and I want to see if all of these cells are equal to the value of X. So again, on a row per row basis, it'll evaluate this. So on the first row, the number is a 3, so that's equal, so that'll come up with a 1. The parent contribution is an X, so that'll come up with a 1. Then I'm going to multiply that by each of the amounts, the appropriate amount for each of the rows. So I'm going to close my circular bracket and hit enter. So you can see here for my first, for player number 3, we've got a parent contribution of 50. That's player 10, and that's player 10. So 50 is correct. If I change this to player 10, we should see 75. So the answer has changed. Now let's see if that's right. So we got 50 for 10 and another 25. So that's correct as well. So that's how we're going to do the subtotals. So I'm going to basically do that concept for each of these columns: sponsors, fundraisers, and 50-50. So I come down here for sponsors, equals Sumproduct, open my circular bracket, add 2 dashes, and then let's evaluate this range to see if it equals whatever value is typed here in this cell. Close my circular bracket. We'll multiply that by dash dash, open the circular bracket. Now we'll do, I think we're on sponsors. Yes. So we'll do this column of information to see if it equals an X, and then multiply that by the amount. Close my bracket, hit enter. So I'm basically going to repeat this for each of those. So equals sum product dash dash. Let's check to see if this, so I was going to make sure it's the correct player that we're working on first. And then we're going to, oops, I forgot my open circular bracket there. So dash dash, open circular bracket, check to see if all those cells equal the value of I2. Perfect. Multiply that by dash dash. Let's check to see if the fundraising column, oops, I forgot my circular bracket again. So we need that expression to evaluate first before we convert to a 1 or a 0. So I need to see if that equals the value of X. Close my bracket, then multiply by the amount. So now we need a 50-50 equals sum product. Open circular brackets. Let's first check to see if these cells, oops, I did it again, trying to do it too fast. So I do a dash dash, open my circular bracket, check to see if those cells equal whatever's typed here, close the circular bracket, multiply it by, I think I'm on 50-50. So then oops, and I did it again. So up top here, I'm going to multiply by the dash dash, open circular bracket. I'm trying to make the video shorter by doing this really quick. So anyway, so I do a dash dash, open circular bracket, check to see if this range equals an X, close my circular bracket, and then multiply by the dollar figures. Close my circular bracket, hit enter, and then what we'll do is we'll just sum that up. So I'll just do an alt equals. There we go. So let's see if that's true. For player number 3, we should have a total of 250. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also add in the filtering, right? Because really, I don't want all the player 10 records. So the idea is when I type this in, I do want to filter the data. So let me get rid of that stuff that was just to kind of play around for a few minutes. So once I type a number 3 in here, what I want to do is click in this cell. Then I'm going to go up to my data menu, and I'm going to choose to do advanced filtering. And I'm going to filter out, see how it picked up on all the data? So it selected the data range, and the criteria is I'm going to choose these 2 cells here. And it's very important that I have it set up the way I do. Notice that the pound sign is the label for that column. So I put that pound sign above the 3. So that's how Excel will know to filter the data out for player number 3. Then I'll go and hit OK, and you can see it filtered all the data out. And then let's see if we've got 250 is all the, so I'll highlight those numbers just to double check my work. Sum is 250 down bottom there. So that kind of works out. And if I check it, the parent contributions is 50. That looks right. The sponsorship should be 50 plus 50, which is $100. The fundraising is just 25. That works out. And then here we have 50-50 at $75. So that all looks great. So if I type in a number 10 here, filter the information out for player number 10. Now I will have to go in here and go and do my filtering again. Go to data, advanced. It has all the ranges selected. So I just hit OK. Notice that it's only showing the records for player number 10 this time. So again, my parent contributions, let's just check our work. 75 looks good. The sponsorship is 50. The fundraising is 25, and 25 is 50, and 50-50 is 25. Perfect. So it's all working out. The only thing that I would add to this is, let me just go and delete the number from there. And let's go do the filter again. Now, if I filter with no value there, it'll show all the data all over again, right? So the only thing I would do to this to kind of clean it up a little bit, notice that my subtotals aren't kind of working out anymore because no number is there. So all these expressions are becoming 0. 0 multiplied by, a 1 multiplied by the 50 is going to equal 0, right? So this is not giving me a grand total here. This is specifically designed to be a summary for each individual player, right? So the idea is you'd filter it and then print it out and give it to the players. So the next thing I would do to clean this up is I'd record a macro so that the filtering happens much quicker. To finish off the example, to record myself doing the macro, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the view menu here. And over here we got macros. And I'm going to choose to record a macro. Once I know what the macro name is going to be called, I'm going to say refresh budget. And the keystroke will be control U and then hit OK. So I'll record myself clicking in the data. Then I go to the data menu, advanced, and I'm going to record myself choosing the range of data. So I record this, expand, record the criteria area, hit OK. Now it didn't filter anything because I didn't have a number there, but that's okay. So now what I want to do is I want to stop recording. I'm going to go to my view, stop recording. So let's try it out. I put a 3 here, hit enter, do a control U, it filtered the list out. Perfect. Do a 10, control U, it filtered the list out, and we got our summary data. And then finally, if I delete that number 10, do a control U, it'll go and put all the data back. So that's how we created our subtotals using the Sumproduct function.